Okay, I'm going to be talking about escape room VR. I run a couple of companies. One is called Amplified Robot, one is called Medical Realities. Medical Realities does virtual reality training for medical students and doctors and surgeons. But Amplified Robot does lots of things. We're really a studio that actually works in AR and VR. And one of the first things that we did, it sounded a lot better with the sound with that little animation. And we partner up with a lot of companies in AR and VR space. And of course, we're always looking to find what's going to be the next big thing. But also, where's the money? Because in order to continue, we need to find out what we can do and how we can actually make money out of AR and VR. Now, in November last year, we partnered up with a company called Tock Unlock in the UK. Now, Tock Unlock actually have physical escape rooms. They actually have 6 locations in the UK. And I run a big meetup group in the UK, and I met the guy that runs Tock Unlock, Ali, at one of my meetups. And we started talking about creating VR aspects to escape rooms. Because escape rooms are great fun. But once you've created an escape room, it's a physical escape room, it's very difficult to change. So we started looking at what we could do with virtual reality to actually sort of do a big change up to the escape room idea. So, first thing we do is actually create a design document to actually outline some of the ideas and how we can actually make VR work for escape room technology and actually escape room environments. So the first thing to do is actually come up with a story. And doing an escape room and doing puzzles in an escape room, it actually needs a good story because you need a background story. So you don't just create it, well, I suggest you don't just create it just for the moment of the VR experience, but there is a recognizable story that actually we can tap into as well going forward when we create other variations of what we're doing in VR escape rooms. So we come up with a storyline based around various things. It's actually set in 2120 when Earth is dying. We've actually used up all our resources. And a big corporation has found a planet which actually has abundant energy. And it started off, it was a great corporation, but then it actually, because it actually owned this planet, it actually controls all the energy. And so now there are renegades which actually go to the planet to try and harvest the energy to bring it back to Earth. So this is the sort of background to the story. Then we created a mood board to get everybody on the same page, because when you talk about something or write something down, you can say something, but people can have lots of visualizations in their mind as to how that's going to be. So the mood board's created to actually take advantage of what other people have been doing so that we all know the sort of type of look and the type of feel of the experience that we want to create. And then we start talking about the environment. How is it going to work? How's this game going to work? How big is the room in which this game is going to take place? And in actual fact, we decided that we were actually going to make 2 rooms and the mirrors of each other. So you can have 2 sets of people wanting to take part in the game running at the same time. And we decided to go for up to 4 players per game. Now, we didn't want them running around. We wanted them to be fairly static because there's a build-up to this, to the game, which is a physical build-up where you actually do have to solve certain puzzles to actually get in to the actual gameplay itself. But the actual gameplay, we designed around a console. I'll tell you more about the console a little bit later. And then, of course, the important thing is what tools have you got? In this case, we call them weapons, but in actual fact, they're not weapons per se, they're also harvesters because they actually harvest the energy from the crystals on the planet. But also, they do need to turn into weapons because you're going to be attacked as you try to leave the planet. So then we create blueprints of what the weapons are going to look like. And the blueprints are very important because prior to coming into the game, the actual participants actually have to figure out what type of weapon they want. And they have to sort of work out exactly what they have to do. Are they all going to have the same type of weapons? Are they going to have different weapons? Are they going to have weapons that complement each other? So this is sort of bringing it all up into there. So with experiential gameplay, the actual setup is really important because you have a physical space that has to look exactly how you want it to look like, but also you have people guiding people through, showing what they should be doing so that people who haven't tried this thing before don't feel disadvantaged and don't feel left out. And then, of course, it's actually creating a flow chart for the actual game as to how the game is going to work, how it's going to work in VR, how we get people all working together to actually have an experience. Typical experience in the escape room in VR is probably going to last about 10 to 12 minutes. And then we create a storyboard, visual storyboard, that actually takes us through every stage of what's going on. So here you'll see we're starting to build up. What we're doing is that there's a console which the four players actually congregate around. This console is actually a lift which actually goes up through the center of the planet out to the escape route at the top of the planet when you get outside. And in the center of this console is an energy beam. And what you're trying to do is, as the lift is going up, you're trying to capture energy from the crystals which are all around you, and then transferring those into the energy beam, which you then transfer into your spacecraft to make a getaway. But before you get into that, there's the puzzle room, because you don't just get to walk straight into this game. It actually has to be set up, so people have to understand what's going on. So there's a physical part to the game, which we call the puzzle room. The better you do in the puzzle room, the better you're going to do in the game as well. Then we actually started to flesh out the idea about how it's going to look, and then we start creating sort of mock-ups in CGI so that we can actually figure out how it's going to work. And it's a continual thing that's actually going on throughout the process. And then there's also mechanics, because there's mechanics within inside the game, because also, in actual fact, to activate the lift, for instance, you need to work with your fellow contestants to actually make the lift work. So you have to figure out how that actually puts itself together. And there's the idea. So that's actually how it starts to look in the actual sort of environment that you get. You see the column of energy sort of reaching up to the planet's surface, and around it is what we call the lift. So you're actually going through a mine shaft, you have the weapons, and you have this, what we call the central console. And this is how it's going to work. So the four players are going to be on the central console. The great way of doing this is that it actually keeps them in a confined space. So in actual fact, there is a physical lift that they get onto, but that's mirrored exactly. When they put on the headsets, they're seeing exactly what they're seeing in real life, except that it's in virtual reality. So when they put their hands out to touch the console or to touch the safety bars on the side, they're there. They can feel them. They're actually there in virtual reality, but they're also there in reality as well. Then there's other mechanics that come into it, because when you actually get to the planet's surface, you're attacked by a whole host of drones. So don't get out of the planet easily. And this is one of the most difficult parts of the actual part of the gameplay, shooting the drones so that you can get out. And then you get a mission completed, and then you can go into your spacecraft and actually then fly back to Earth. And the tools that we use to sort of create this, Unity 3D gaming engine, I think that's fairly standard, but there's really only two that actually sort of work properly. There's the Unreal Engine as well. But Unity we find a lot better. It's a lot easier to work with. The developers find it easier, and it's actually quicker to work with. You have to make some compromises sometimes in the look of the CGI, but overall, Unity is what we go for. And then, of course, a lot of the CGI work is done in Maya by Autodesk. And sound is obviously very important because inside the physical room, you've actually got fans, you've got great binaural sound system which is going all around you, and you've got the lift itself. And the lift actually has mechanics in it as well. So the actual lift floor actually rises up and down and tilts and shudders when there are explosions or when the lift is going up and down. Now, it doesn't have to go very far, because when you're in virtual reality, even a slight movement that works with your virtual reality will give you the experience that you want. And the headsets and the setup, we chose HTC Vive. And then, of course, to make it all run together, a number of high-end gaming computers. So this was the team that actually worked on it. The CTO, Matt Leatherbarrow, lead developer, Kieran Carrick, creative director, James Pendry, CGI artist, Shan Zheng, and developer Grant Stevens. So it's actually quite a small team. We have other people that sort of come in and do sound design as well, but that's a core team that actually created this in about 3.5 months from scratch. And in actual fact, that it now appears in a new standalone venue in Leeds. So now Tock Unlock have actually got 7 actual areas and locations where you can actually start to play. And the great thing about using the virtual reality one is that we can actually break it out into pop-up VR experiences as well. So I'm going to run a little video now which will give you a sort of background to what we're coming up with in the coming months. So hopefully there's sound with this one. So that's what we're going to do in the very near future. There's no time for any questions, but thank you for listening to me this morning. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope to come back to AWE next year and actually show off more of what we've been doing over the last 12 months. Thank you so much.